Can we truly start over? Do we choose who we are? Or are we just a result of our environment? To what point does our past determine our future? And why bother fighting something we cannot control? These questions are at the core of the game Disco Elysium, questions that many of us may struggle with, being unable to let go of who we are, falling into all sorts of destructive activities to cope with the person we have become. Although the story of the game is driven by a murder mystery, the question of identity and how we deal with the past is the bigger yet less obvious theme of the game. With a not so subtle commentary on different socioeconomic theories and perspective of this world and our own, Disco Elysium also serves as a caricature of the many flaws our world and humanity as a whole have.
You wouldn't like it if I told you what was back there. Why'd you think you had to bludgeon yourself into oblivion? Or did you not sense yourself marinating? Poured so much on yourself, got a bit carried away, did we, Chef?
Fear and apprehension. You should ask what's out there first.
There's this giant ball there. And evil apes. And the evil apes are juking it out on the ball. You're one of them. It's basically all just evil apes juking it out on a giant ball. You can't even make out it's a ball when you're joking it out. It's that large, infinitesimally small. Vying for resources is just a stupid expression you picked up somewhere. The part of the presentation you want to take home with you is this. You have to beat the other evil apes in the face, or you lose. Yes, it is. And you drowned in that sadness a long time ago.
To delve deeper into these themes, let me first tell you about Disco Elysium and its narrative. So what is Disco Elysium? A role-playing game developed by Sound that is not a typical RPG. This game I would describe as a point-and-click adventure with many dialogue trees that are affected by your skills and thoughts. Each decision helps discover a piece of the murder you are solving as a cop in charge of the investigation. This game has a unique gameplay element. Without combat, most of the situations you encounter are solved via dialogue and actions that are often checked by a dice roll. These dice rolls can be influenced by your stats as well as by different events or information based on your character's skills. For example, a more perceptive character can have better chances of discovering hidden doors or elements while walking around in the world, while a character with good levels of drama can help you lie or detect lies in conversations.
That's even cooler! You investigating that and all. But, I am not a lorry driver. I'm just a street vendor. I don't know anything about that.
A blatant lie, sire. Yet he tells it with such conviction. We'd believe him if we didn't know better.
There is also an element of gameplay structure that affects your character. The Thought Cabinet allows players to internalize thoughts that you have uncovered during your playthrough, changing how your character thinks and achieving some type of perk or benefit after a period of time in which you're affected in a negative way. There are also other items in games such as clothing that will raise and sometimes lower attributes of your character, and items you can equip to aid you in your adventure such as a flashlight or a crowbar to pry open locked places. Now that we talked about the basic mechanics of the game, we can tackle the story. We start with a character splattered on the floor after a crazy vendor, causing some damage to the property and his own memory. Our amnesiac cop must discover who he is and what he's doing on the floor of the Whirling in Rags, a hotel in the coast of Revachol in Martinez. But where are we? The world of Disco Elysium is quite unique, as it is a conglomerate of isolas or islands, a continent of matter enveloped by the Pale. The Pale itself is something we will discuss later on, but for now just think of it as some type of void that is ever expanding, dividing the world of Disco Elysium. We wake up on Revachol, a city on the Isola of Insulite. and the disgraced former capital of the world. Revachol is currently under the control of the Coalition of Nations, which is an alliance of Grad and the Republic of Sur-la-Clef, Messina, and Orange, who defeated the revolution, a group of communists and anarchists. The Coalition of Nations made sure that the free market capitalism imposed by these foreign powers persisted, allowing the growth of a local market fueled by cheap immigrant labor, making the rich richer and pushing the less fortunate deeper into poverty. Places such as Martinez see the extent of this greed, with the destruction caused by the revolution still being in place by the time we start the game.
Ruination has come. The broken arches betray the once grand history of this building. It towered over the harbor until it happened. A great force from the northeast fired into the city. Heavy artillery shelled the coastline, fired from the water, a straight shot into Revachol. The tenement acted as a defensive wall against the worst of the shelling until it was destroyed, and they had a direct firing line. Those arches acted as support for something greater than what you see now. Only 3 stories stand where 9 to 12 once did. Restoration has failed. What the shelling took out was never rebuilt.
The place is a dump to say the least. To police these regions, the Revachol Citizen Militia, or RCM, where our detective and companion, we'll talk about them later, work, was established to maintain control over the coalition territory. Alcohols may notify the RCM of a hanged man that is still on display behind the hotel until the day we arrive, which serves as the trigger to the start of the game, and uncovering this mystery will be one of our main goals. Going back to the hotel floor, just before we wake up, we have a talk with ourselves, or rather our body. You see, one of the main gameplay elements of this game deals with our different personality traits, divided in intellect, physique, psych, and motorics, each of them subdivided in a total of 24 skills, with 6 per trait. This serves almost as different personalities or part of the detective that make him who he is, and often chime in to influence different situations throughout the game. In this case, we can wake up to the voices of our ancient reptilian brain and our limbic system that take on personas of their own as we wake up from our deep slumber after our bender. We gather our things from our trash room and go outside, where we interact with the first character in the game, Classide Miss Orange Disco Dancer. Talking to her, we discover our purpose and a rough idea of who we are. An RCM detective here to take care of the investigation of the hangman, or at least that is one of the ways we can gather this information. Overall, this game gives the player enough freedom to do the investigation on their own. It isn't impossible just to walk past her on the first day of the investigation. Downstairs, we are acknowledged by an angry hotel manager who is not very happy with our activities of the previous night, a lovely old lady in a wheelchair, and our soon-to-be companion. Waiting for us at the door just before we leave, we are greeted by Lieutenant King Kitsuragi, a reserved and intelligent man that serves as a foil to our main character, whose tragic pinball past may only be revealed for the most inquisitive of detectives.
Kim, Pinball, Kitsuragi. Exactly. That's what he's known as. His reputation precedes him.
So now he remembers. Fine, I'm Kim Pinball Kitsuragi, aka the Kimball. You remember.
As we continue our investigation, we uncover the current climate we're dealing with. The dock workers from Martinez under the Dock Workers Union are on strike, since winning significant concessions on the first 2, overtime pay and medical plans. The third strike demands seats on the board of the principal operation of the harbor against the Wild Pines Group, which is a big corporation responsible for up to 8% of the shipments of Disco Elysium's cargo.
It's quite simple, you see. Every time the Wild Pines Group makes a decision about what? About anything really, it needs the signature of each of the 2,200 workers in its Martinez terminal. Just so you understand, this is but one of 22 terminals owned by Wild Pines. Essentially, not only are they kings of the company, They are also kings of the 72,000 employees of Wild Pines Group.
The Wild Pines Group, unhappy with the current situation, hired a group of mercenaries to infiltrate the Union and break the strike from within. Now, why am I telling you all this if we're talking about the murder investigation? Well, the man hanging outside the whirling in rags is one of these mercenaries, and their military and armed trained companions don't like the body of their commander hanging out in public.
By now, I'm sure you've figured out who the dead man was working for. The bad guys. Wild Pines. Sent to scare us. Another violent measure of the top hats against us flatcaps. Harry, this strike is the culmination of many, many mistakes made by the Wild Pines Group. They tried to shut the strike down by sending in armed mercenaries. A security contractor? Can you imagine that? Workers standing in peaceful protest, united in the spirit of fellowship, and they send hired killers to mow us down with machine gun fire?
We also learn that the murder was a lynching, performed by the guys in the Union, who are led by Titus Hardy. The Hardy Boys act as a vigilante group that take care of the things around Martinez.
Los Hardys? They're an independent militant group. A bit too high-strung, but it comes with the responsibility. They're sort of like you. Preserve the rule of law and all that. Except it's Everard's law. But really, they're just like you.
And having all 7 of the boys confess to the crime makes it impossible for the RCM detective to single out a culprit to arrest.
Then we went out back and used it to hang him.
As he speaks, his fists contract, going through the pulling motion again, savoring it.
We did this together, all of us, until he was dead. That's why there's a container belt around his neck.
However, upon further investigation of the body, we discovered a single bullet from a rifle in the victim's head, making us believe that the lynching was a cover-up from the actual murder.
Treatment.
He's proposing the bullet was the real cause of death, and the hanging an attempt to conceal this fact.
This situation creates tension between the mercenaries and the Union's members, that if left unattended, will break into a small-scale civil war between these two factions and end up in a massacre.
Normally break protocol like this, but the situation demands it. If you don't solve this murder, I'm afraid we may have a bloodbath on our hands.
The words bloodbath sound cold in her mouth. They taste of iron and strawberries.
Yes. I'm afraid this strike may descend into a small-scale civil war, with possible consequences for all of Rivershoal
Upon
West.
further questioning with the Hardy Boys, we discover that there is an 8th member of the crew, one that is missing, but they're not open to talk about them. We continue investigation to discover that this member is Ruby, the only female member of the Hardy Boys. Questioning Miss Orange Disco Dancer, we discover that she was sexually involved with Lely, the now deceased mercenary, and she provides a theory of how Ruby could have killed the mercenary motivated by jealousy, as Miss Orange states that Ruby was in love with her.
She's silent for a second, as if looking into herself for certainty. Then, in a hushed voice, she says,
Ruby. She has this thing for me, ever since I met her and the boys downstairs. She's been pretty frank about what she wants. Sex. And more. I made the mistake of confiding in her. I told her I was on the run. She started protecting me. It became an unhealthy relationship. When I started spending time with Lely, she told me to end it. Said there would be shit if I didn't. It was not a good meeting. We stopped talking after that, but...
We take this information to Titus, as well as our evidence gathered pointing to Ruby being the criminal. A time frame where she suddenly disappeared the night of the murder, a secret elevator that could have placed her on the roof, the most probable location of the shooting, an old revolutionary rifle found in a secret stash in the abandoned mall, giving her a murder weapon, and the motive of her jealousy towards Lely, as she had feelings for Miss Orange. With this evidence, Titus acknowledges that she could have been the murderer, and points us to the coast to continue the search for our main suspect.
You're on thin ice here, asshole.
It's a thought exercise, Titus. Think. You kill him. Get up there. Shoot him. Get down.
Alone. I don't drag my men into shit with me.
If she used us, then that's a serious violation of the Hardy Code, boss.
But she didn't. This is fucking stupid, Titus. This and the queer thing, all of it. Why aren't more of you defending her? This is fucking stupid, Titus.
Glenn, I thought the same thing when she skipped town and left us in this shit.
Oh, so he didn't rule her out completely. And she skipped town. This is good.
After some exploring and looking through a collapsed building, we managed to find Ruby, who has been hiding since our arrival. She has been paranoid about us, thinking that we work for a mob boss and were sent to dispatch her. You see, she has been running a complex drug operation on the side, which is opposed to the current mob ruler, La Puta Madre. And Ruby believed we were working for him all along.
You roll into town. I wasn't about to stick around for questioning by a goddamn La Puta Madre agent.
That strange, distant fear is getting close now. It's a fear of yourself.
Yes, you. Everyone says you're his peon, his human can opener.
After interrogating Ruby, we discovered that the gunshot was not produced by her, and she was, in fact, helping Miss Orange to cover up the murder. Miss Orange, whose name is Glacira Mando, is a corporate spy, and one on the run at that. After her last job, fearing her employer would attempt to kill her in order to silence her, she fled to Martinez, where she found herself at the Whirling in Rags.
They will kill me, sir. If you file my name, take me in for questioning, enter me into the moral intern mill, well, then I'm fucked. For nothing. This murder didn't have anything to do with me.
Here we go. For once, you seem to have her off guard. Actually, this murder did have a little to do with her.
It's not nice, but it's not illegal. Not here in Revachol, or even in Oranje.
What exactly did you do?
Industrial espionage. I joined a business collective with the intention of betraying them. I did my job well enough to be asked to do it again, with a bigger company. The kind you really, really don't fuck with. I took their ledgers, 2 decades worth of accounts.
After getting involved with Lely, one night, while they were having sex, a gunshot pierced through Lely's skull, latching in his head. Believing the shot was meant for her, Glacira in a panic asked Ruby for help to cover up the murder. Ruby, having the most influence over the Hardy Boys, convinced them to make the scene look like a lynching to protect Glacira.
No, I didn't do it. I only helped stage the lynching, though I doubt that makes much of a difference to you.
Depending on her actions, Ruby either leaves or dies after explaining the situation, and we're left back in square one in terms of resolving the murder case. Upon our return to our Whirling in Rags after interrogating Ruby, we discover a battle is brewing. We can see the Hardy Boys protecting their ground against the 3 mercenaries. After discovering Ruby's innocence, we're left without someone to blame for the murder. The very riled up and somewhat drunk group of mercenaries judge our actions as insufficient and incompetent in finding out who the culprit is. This prompts them to take justice into their own hands, and they are now in a standoff with the Hardy Boys. We can intervene here, but regardless of our actions, blood will be shed, and even Kim and you can get injured in here.
Get lost, comedian. You cops had your chance. Now it's fucking time for some justice.
Left. A swarm of enemy lead passes mere millimeters from your side, tearing fabric off your coat. Feels like the lightest of tucks. 2 shots ring at once. One from the lieutenant's pistol, and the other from Du Bois. It's aimed at the lieutenant, but it misses. You hear a scream behind you. Oh God, Watch out. You see two crazed eyes stare at you through all the smoke and the panic. With blood gushing from his face, the man raises his pistol at you. Then he squeezes the trigger. The look of vengeance, framed in blood, lips shaking. This is the last thing he'll do on Earth. But he will do it. He is your end. Here it comes. Death.
After recovering from the events of the Tribunal, the player and his companion are left without a trace to follow. With our morale low, but not willing to give up, we decided to inspect Classide's room one more time. If we decided not to arrest her after questioning her about Ruby, she will depart, leaving behind a gift for our detective.
Down in large, uneven handwriting, just as the writer was about to rush out the door. I'm sorry, I fucked everyone over. P.S. I didn't kill him. P.P.S. Gift upstairs.
In the room of the murder, she leaves a red thread that shows the trajectory of the bullet, making it seem that the bullet never came from inside the patio next to the room, but rather from a small outpost on a small island next to a forgotten town in Martinez. With our destination set, we navigate towards the small island to finally uncover the mystery behind the murder. On this island, we find a small outpost used during the war with the revolution, and to our dismay, we find an old lone soldier. Josef Lilianovich Dross, known in the game as the Deserter. Dross was part of the Revolutionary Army, but after the attack on Martinez, he abandoned his post while the coalition force attacked and killed everyone in his unit. As the lone survivor, he stayed in hiding from the people of Martinez, still believing in his ideals of the revolution and fostering hate for the coalition in his heart.
You're with the RCM, the coalition-appointed mob that enforces bourgeois morals in Revachol. You're the RCM. You represent the Moralist International, the enemies of humanity who took this city. I represent their adversary, le Parti Communiste d'Insolande. Take me to them as a prisoner of war. I have relinquished my weapon. I can no longer serve. No superiors can relieve me of my duty. You bulldoze them all to a mass grave for trying to free humanity.
He continued living in isolation and was influenced by a decaying mind caused by the Insulindian Phasmid, a cryptid that is found through a side quest that has an aura that is damaging to humans. This side quest and the creature also reveals a lot of the world and its destiny to the player. Due to his loneliness, Joss would often use his old revolutionary rifle to look over the people of Martinez as a pastime, and after a while, develop a parasocial fixation on the corporate spy Classide. He would spy on her while she did drugs and partied all night, and was ultimately the one who shot Lely the mercenary, fueled by jealousy and rage.
Them. Fucking. I didn't like that. Jealousy is a reactionary concept. I didn't like the Reaver enjoying himself, drugged out, soothed in the arms of a young woman. I wanted him to die so he could not enjoy life anymore. And I wanted to see his head explode. That too. She should know better than to hold a child murderer between her thighs. I knew he'd be there for one more second. Writhing. That's all it takes for the bullet to reach his head. Now that I think of it, I wasn't aiming for his mouth. I wanted his brains to spill out on her. But you can't have everything.
When I got to this point of the story, I believe this reveal was anticlimactic. We have been going through all this investigation, finding clues, interrogating people, to put together this amazingly crafted puzzle of who committed the murder, to then have some random person we just met at the end of the game be the culprit. The issue is that Joss is not a random person. He is the manifestation of the decades of hatred and guilt from the failed revolution. And Lely, the mercenary, being hired to put down the strike, was the representation of the capitalistic foreign powers that control Roboshot to put an end to the revolution. Joss wasn't able to let go of his past. In his mind, his act was justified as an act of freedom to his nation. He is in fact just stuck in the past, unable to let go.
I've used it for killing people.
Here we go. A trail of blood. The lieutenant smells it too.
Killing people?
It's a gun. That's what they're for. You want a moralist euphemism? Defending your family and your property. I haven't done that. I've used it to kill people.
Interesting. During or after the war?
There is no after the war. Class war is never over.
So he's continued killing after hostilities ended. Okay. A delicate tangle of arms and legs unfolds from the reeds, limb by limb, to then just stand there, moving its scythe-like arms in ghostly silence.
The existence of the Phasmid that reveals himself to the player right after interrogating Joss explains a lot about the world of Disco Elysium. For context, there is a side quest that you can start by talking to Lena, the old lady in a wheelchair, all the way at the start of the game. She was the sole witness of a cryptid known as the Insulindian Phasmid, a creature that hid on the reeds of the sea fortress for hundreds of years. In this side quest, you can help Morel, the cryptozoologist, and Lena's husband, with finding and even taking a picture as evidence of the cryptid's existence. The cryptid itself is able to communicate with the player if they approach it. This creature will explain to the player how the Pale came to be with the existence of humans, and how the birds and the plants all are sure that humanity will destroy them all.
The Pale too came with you. No one remembers it before you. The Nidarians do not. The radially symmetrics do not. There is an almost unanimous agreement between the birds and the plants that you are going to destroy us all.
The Phasmid explains that the Pale is a shadow cast by humanity eating away at the world. As the Phasmid retreats after a conversation, Joss falls into a catatonic state due to the effects of the Phasmid itself caused to the human mind.
I do not have a starter display, so I use a neurodegenerative element to aid in camouflage. Do not worry. It is only destructive over long periods of time.
Finally, knowing the culprit of the murder, we can proceed to the end of the game, as seen that, depending on how you played, your views and your actions will determine if your companion believes you're a competent cop and will influence the ending and your reputation in the precinct.
Well, first I will go back to my station and write the most detailed report anyone has ever seen. It will have to be good to cover all these. Then I will have a serious talk with my captain. Detective, we just stopped a small-scale war. Something is happening to Revachol. I don't know what yet, but it's going to be a hard spring for the RCM. We need to get ready, infiltrate, investigate.
But who are we? There are multiple things you can uncover about your past while you make progress in the game. For example, your name being Harrier Du Bois. By digging deeper into the evidence found during our playthrough, we can uncover the mystery of our identity. Early in the game, we can open a trash container next to the body of the deceased. This container has a damaged ledger, in which we find our number of cases, a couple of reports from our last cases, and other stats from our work as a cop. We also find a letter inside the ledger, one that everything in our body tells us not to read, as if our senses are trying to protect us. If we continue to read, we will pass out. Clearly, this letter has an effect on our character.
Your hands shake, holding on to it. Every morning when I step out and you're asleep behind me, it says, I find a little piece of sadness in me. I carry it in my chest down Voyager Road. Every step I take, it grows. By the time I reach the fuel station, it has filled me entirely. I step onto the light rail and look back. Sparks fall from the bow collector. I know it will be like this until late afternoon, when I get off the 42 and walk back to you. You. Every step I take will get lighter. It almost makes me run. Sometimes I do. I can't believe I met you. I can't believe the happiness I feel with you. You have a vast, vast soul, and I will always, always, always come back to it. Kisses, kisses, kisses. You feel the air sucked out of your lungs and the blood sucked out of your head. Everything around you gets dark. Small white dots appear.
When roaming around the pier, we can find a public phone. After a couple of die rolls, we use our muscle memory to dial a phone number. The voice on the line is a woman's, who seems concerned that we're calling at night, waking her, and we can ask who she's with in the room. She knows her name and sounds almost disappointed. She knows who we are and does not want to talk to us.
Calling. Calling still. Then the ocean breaks. Out of the depths, a woman's voice emerges. Small. The dearest thing you've ever heard.
Hello? No. It's you, isn't it?
The woman from the letter and from the phone is Dora Ingerlund, Harry's ex-fiancée. After a 12-year-long relationship, she left Harry 6 years ago, and this was something that he never recovered from. Later in the game, if he rests on the island post, Harry will have a dream where he interacts with the representation of Dora in the form of Dolores Dia, a historical figure of this world. In his dream, we get more context of the relationship he had with Dora, a painful breakup, unborn twins, and the almost illusional idea of fixing a crumbling relationship with this long-lost love.
That's it, yes. We've talked about it a million times. You will get over it, just like I did. People do. Things will get good for you again.
Where in hell? Stop. You're only making it worse for him. You never help with anything.
See? It just takes some time. For you, I think it'll take something like 20 years, maybe. It was hard for me too. I used to think I couldn't live without you. But I can.
She keeps her shoulders squared and her back straight, but it's clear you're still making her sad.
No, Harry, we can't. We already tried again, and it didn't work.
I love that Harry pushes away due to his erratic behaviors, his lack of money, and his obsession over his job. This leaves Harry in a vicious cycle. He asks Dora in his dream if they will see each other again, and she replies that they will, as they always do. Harry starts to have a recurring dream of Dora, leaving for a distant land, leaving him behind forever.
This is a dream. Can't you see? I'm already in Morova by now. Who knows how long ago this happened? A year? 2? 5 years ago? Right here, tomorrow night. Once this dream starts happening, it keeps happening. 3 times a week, at least. And Harry, it really, really looks like it started happening again.
And he's unable to move on. Harry's heart dies over and over again, pushing him into a deep depression that he can't get out of. making him indulge in drugs and alcohol as a coping mechanism to help him forget.
Real darkness has love for a face. The first death is in the heart, Harry. See you tomorrow.
Harry is not only in denial with this past love, but with who he is. He can consider himself to be the best detective, a disco star, the coolest guy in the world. But in reality, he's just a washed-up cop that can't let go of his past. Going back to Joss in the island settlement, and with this new information at hand, we can see how his character paints a picture of how Harry could end up like him. A lone, miserable man whose inability to let go of the past left him stranded in an island to rot, and unable to form any meaningful connections with the people due to his past that each day becomes more irrelevant. Joss is a representation of the misery caused by holding on to the past. He went insane and quite literally refused to move on, even from the physical location he was stationed at in the island settlement. But how did Harry manage to forget his past? Did all the drugs and alcohol finally erase his mind? I personally believe that is something for the player to answer. As mentioned before, you're free to choose whether you keep using alcohol and drugs as a coping mechanism, if you're righteous or a corrupt cop, if you're someone helping their community, or just someone out there for themselves, making sure only their needs are met. The real question here is not whether Harry can forget, but if he can move on from the past. As hard as he tries, it seems that his mind-erasing benders are a common occurrence, as the members of his precinct says that this is not the first time, and as Dora mentions in his dream, he will start to have this recurring dream that would only add salt to his wounds. There's also another theory of how Harry could have lost his memories, and it relates to the Pell. The Pell, as mentioned before, is some type of ever-expanding void. Besides being found surrounding each Isola, if we follow a side quest of a programmer investigating a sound anomaly, we discover the presence of a 2mm hole leaking Pell inside the church that we visit in-game. The Pell itself is an unmeasurable lack of something, which has properties that contains the entire human consciousness. This has the effect on people that are exposed to it, making them have vision of the past, present, and the future.
Like Gabriel Buenguerro in Pergunte a Poeira. You're the opposite of me, then. I remember everything, even things I never knew.
During Harry's bender, he could have visited the church and could have been exposed to the 2mm hole in the Pell, both deleting his memories and giving him visions and powers beyond his understanding. This could be explaining the multitude of voices Harry seems to have inside his brain, the understanding of his environments that allow him to see the past, the present, and the future, as well as his communications with the city itself, where it warns him about its impending doom, with visions of a future nuclear bomb that will destroy Rorschach.
She's speaking fast because she's afraid.
Death. It is terrifying. I need you to protect me from death. I cannot perish. Look at me. I cannot end. In 22 years, the first shot will be fired. Not a shot from a gun. An atomic device that will level all of me. All of me.
If the Pale theory is correct, then although it is a grim possibility for the world due to its constant expansion and consumption of everything in existence, I believe it is better for Harry. If he lost his memories because of the Pale, he has the chance to restart his life, picking and choosing his memories to become the type of cop you, the player, want him to become. Hopefully that is a happier, better version of himself, free from all the chains of his past. But as mentioned before, this means that the Pale's influence is very present in the world and will eventually cause it to end. However, if the Pale can allow people to see multiple realities and multiple possibilities in the future, perhaps one of them will hint at a way to stop it, and perhaps we can have a bright future after all. So what is the Pale?
Your colleague seemed adamant. Okay. The Pale is the most dominant geological feature of the world, Detective. The separative tissue between the islas. It is the inter-islary mass. Achromatic, odorless, featureless. The Pale is the enemy of matter and life. It is not like any other, or anything in the world. It is the transition state of being into nothingness. It's difficult to describe, or even measure. Something whose fundamental property is the suspension of properties. Physical, epistemological, linguistic. The further into Pale you travel, the steeper the degree of suspension, right down to the mathematical. Numbers stop working. No one has yet passed the number barrier. It may be impossible.
We discussed that the Pale is in-game, but I believe the Pale has a deeper meaning besides its in-game explanation. As I've seen, the Pale can be a metaphor for a couple of things. It could simply be a metaphor for climate change. As the Phasmid explained, the Pale came to be when humans came into existence. With a constant expansion and more capitalistic society that promotes enterprise growth and improving margin regardless of human or environmental costs, the Pale can represent the end of humanity by its own greed. The Pale could also be a representation of mental illness and existential dread, something that spread with fears and anxieties, ultimately robbing us of our identities and removing our motivation to keep on living. The first theory we find in the game of how Harry ended up in the save would point to this. Instead of the Pale erasing his memories, he could have brought them back, all the painful memories from his relationship with Dora, or even visions of the end of the world could have given him enough reason to want to end his suffering with a dangerous amount of drugs and alcohol. Ultimately, the Pale could also be a representation of the past, and the inability to move forward due to it, such as Harry's internal battle of trying to move forward after his breakup, the dated political views in the game that are present as a suggestion to save the future of Evershot, but are all failed forms of governments from the past. It is really hard to explain what the Pale is. There is not a correct answer. We can just be sure that it's present in the world of Disco Elysium, and that it will eventually consume it. The only way it could be contained seems to be with the human spirit, by not giving it to the past, by moving forward, by having hope. We discover this by following the Ravers and the Programmer's side quest, where we can aid in turning the church into a nightclub while we investigate the 2mm hole inside the church. By being hardcore, all four of the human spirit, we're able to give Rebel more time to exist.
Encasement, confinement, of something they were afraid of. Something new and unheard of on the Isla. I think that's what the Crabman is experiencing when he climbs around upstairs. Like, this is some old world shit you bees had heard about. I thought the best way to deal with it was to build a church, surrounding it, to contain it.
We also discover how the Pale forms, almost like a cancer on the world, showing up in small spots where it will expand and eventually swallow everything there is. It first starts to swallow sound and information, causing bad events to occur such as the failed revolution and all the businesses in the doomed district to fail.
I understand. A theory of the Pale where instead of an outer ocean, it metastasizes, like a cancer or a mold, erupting in points inside the world. According to this, how long and information causing data losses in the East Insulindian front. Have you considered why it's formed in a church? And also when or how it might start growing, or if it has other effects in addition to sound and data?
Regardless of our efforts, this does not seem to be enough, as seen in the events of the book A Sacred and Terrible Air, a book based on the world of Disco Elysium 20 years after the events of the game. The Pale is ever expanding, ready to swallow the world. With this impending doom, all that is left is to enjoy the rest of our lives, and choose what type of detective we want to be. We can argue that through the game we can help the people from Martinez, that we can get better from our destructive behaviors, that we can make a difference. But in the end it won't matter. When the world is ending, only the sane could be considered insane. Perhaps Harry was the sanest of them all. In the end, it doesn't matter if we uncover the mystery of who we are. What truly matters is if we can keep moving towards the future, if we can get freed from the past, as even the clearest water, if deep enough, can drown.
Here we go.
I would often go there, to the tiny church there, the smallest church in Saint-Saëns, though it once was larger. How the realm may rest there, down through the mist there, toward the Seven Sisters, toward those pale cliffs there. I would often stay there, in their tiny yard there. I have been so glad here, looking forward to the past here. But now, you are all alone. None of this matters. No, none of this matters at all.